a Latter-day Saint and an evangelical might approach one another with certain levels of suspicion, that hasn't really gotten in the way of our friendship.
Right.
Is Jeff wearing a hairpiece?
Let's end it here.
Don't touch
the rumors.
It's sacred. Hello, Saints. My name is Jeff. I am a pastor in Utah exploring everything I can about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I'm currently with my friend, Francom.
Road trip!
That's right. We're on a road trip, and we are going down to St. George for another video that I'm making. And we thought it might be a good idea for us to have a conversation on maybe some of the things between our respective faith groups, Latter-day Saint, Evangelical, that might make us suspicious of one another and prohibit us from doing cool stuff like this, like taking road trips.
All while not trying to get pulled over.
There's a cop right there.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it. So one of the reasons why we wanted to capture this conversation is because you and I have a friendship. Like, we have ongoing conversation. We talk pretty much every day. One of the things I appreciate about our friendship is that where a Latter-day Saint and an evangelical might approach one another with certain levels of suspicion, that hasn't really gotten in the way of our friendship.
Right.
And as a result, we actually have really great conversation about maybe even some of those areas where there could be suspicion, but then so much more.
Yeah.
Whether it be like doctrine or just like life.
Right. Yeah, we almost have to like set suspicion aside, like just suspend it for a minute.
Yeah.
Like maybe I'll come back to it, and sure, like early on there's moments of like, not right.
Yeah.
What's this Jeff guy about? Right.
To that point, I kind of just wanted to talk through like what were maybe some of your main suspicions of me, because I invited myself over to the Latter-day Saint house, if you will. I just thought it might be good for us to like talk about that, because we really do think that there could be progress made in the broader conversation to overcome some of those suspicions.
Well, I guess I want to like set the foundation here of like when Latter-day Saints, when we see an evangelical sort of speak of our religion, we're automatically suspicious. It's like even evangelicals trying to speak with other evangelicals about the Latter-day Saints and what we believe, who we are, and they always get it wrong, right? Or they're maybe in the ballpark, but so many details are off. And every Latter-day Saint has had the experience of being confronted by an evangelical. We're automatically kind of have our guard up.
Yeah, no doubt. That's one of the things that intrigued me as I kind of went into Hello Saints, because there is such this like wall of hostility that has existed, not just historically, but even personally with Latter-day Saints. I knew the historic hostility, but the more I've been in this Hello Saints journey, the more I'm realizing it's actually really personal. Like you said, every Latter-day Saint probably has a story or many stories where somebody from a different faith group or even an evangelical was contending with them or confronting them and causing there to be maybe even fear or hurt walking away from a conversation like that.
Yeah, I think early on there's that suspicion of it'd be sort of cool to see your videos, you go on this journey, and then near the end you'd be like preaching at me, right? And sometimes, and I've used the analogy of like, sometimes you walk into my home and you're like, oh, great furniture, wow, you know, how'd you do this wallpaper thing or whatever?
Yeah.
And then you're like, great, now that I've seen your house, I'm going to drag you over to my house. I'm like, well, Jeff, wait, I didn't know I wanted to go to your house. You do. Let me talk to you about it.
Let me show you how I do crown molding.
Exactly. Right. And then there's this feeling like, wait a minute, why is he dragging me over to his house and preaching at me? And then I'm sort of sharing this dynamic with my wife early on. She's like, actually, I really enjoy that part of just hearing how he interprets this theology or doctrine or, from his experience.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
I've just always operated from a belief that like, I think there's power in relationship when equal attention is given to like not only being understood but also understanding.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've been hoping for with some of these mantras, like fighting criticism with curiosity. It's somebody to say like, I'm not going to pass judgment on you. I'm going to give you room to explain where you're coming from so I can at least be informed.
Yeah.
Or even let's like disagree with dignity and respect. Let's maintain a space for honesty even where we disagree.
Yeah.
I have been hoping and wanting that this conversation isn't necessarily about me coming in and like combating Latter-day Saint belief, but it's more of I've taken the time to understand. Now, can we make this a two-way relationship with you also understanding what I believe?
Right. Yeah, because there is that feeling of, the curiosity over, what is it?
Criticism.
Curiosity over criticism.
Until it's really left an
I gotta
impression.
buy one of the shirts.
So anyway, you'll remember it.
So, but sometimes it feels like, okay, he's now preaching at me. I think he's left the curiosity world, and now what is he doing, right?
Yeah.
But there's power in that contrast as well in connecting us, where I've seen your home and appreciate it the best I can, and but here's where I'm coming from, and now with that, it's not to convince you of my way, right? Would you say, are you trying to convince us of your way?
No, I'm not trying to convince you of my way. My greatest desire, and this is from my evangelical DNA, is always entering into conversations with anybody.
Yeah.
Whether it's a Latter-day Saint, another evangelical, a Catholic, or atheist. Are there ways that we can kind of move past some of these things to really focus on Christ, who he is? Because at the end of the day, these conversations about faith and religion and doctrine, I don't believe doctrine saves people, and I don't think any organization saves anybody. I don't think the Latter-day Saint Church saves people. I don't think the Evangelical Church saves people. I think Jesus does. I mean, because for me, a lot of this whole endeavor comes from a really strong conviction I have. It's tied to my testimony. I actually shared it recently on an interview with the Stick of Joseph guys, the Paul brothers, and that is when I was born again, it was because the Lord opened my eyes as I grew up in the church to the fact that religion doesn't save you, okay? That I save you. And I'm not looking for religion. This isn't about religion. This is about your relationship with me. So I really felt the Lord saying that to me. This is not to say that religion's not important, though. It is.
Uh-huh.
So we can talk through the religion aspects of things while still driving at, for me, what is a personal conviction tied to my testimony, regardless of the religious context, and that is relationship with God. That's what I'm always hoping to drive toward, and everybody's at a different place in that even relational space with God, or how relationship with God interacts with religion, which means not everybody's going to be up for a Hello Saints type of conversation.
Yeah. And maybe this is another video, but I think a lot of Latter-day Saints would sort of put a little more nuance in there, where I think we would agree, yes, religion doesn't save you, but Jesus saves you, but we would then say, yeah, but he has revealed certain things as far as how that works. But anyway, this is maybe a different video, right?
Yeah.
So, again, this is another point where I think if Latter-day Saint wasn't here, you would say that, and people would be like, oh, well, no, Jeff, I mean, religion is important, and again, you're not saying it's not important.
Right.
Again, that's just part of this dialogue, right?
Yeah. It's important. For me, it's not as much of the point.
Right.
As a Latter-day Saint would probably say. No, it's very much part of the point.
Yeah.
Going back to our friendship, our willingness to hang with each other, even where we're not seeing things the same way, or even where there's even pain points, in my opinion, that actually deepens the relationship.
Right.
Now,
yes,
again, keeping this relationally centered, not everybody's going to be wired that way. Some people feel a pain point in an interaction with someone, and that's enough for them, and they're like, I don't think I'm interested in this. And that's why even with Hello Saints, there's some people who they're tagging out. I've heard enough.
Yeah.
This is your 7th Book of Mormon video where you're not necessarily giving a lot of attention to Jesus, as it means to us. And
you just totally skipped over Alma 7.
Yeah. Or
come on, Jeff.
Yeah, we get it. You see anachronisms. I'm done.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. That makes sense to me. There has to be space for that.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of space you would offer someone in a friendship. And I think where evangelicals can come on really hot sometimes, where they hold you captive, they corner you, and try to twist your arm behind your back. That's so contrary to how relationships work. Yeah. So in the same way that if, you and I started talking just on a friend level, and you reach a point where you're like, I don't know, man, I'm not totally feeling, the differences are too much.
Yeah. Or it's can we just go to a baseball game and not talk about the afterlife or something?
I'm not going to be if you were backing me, I'm not going to be hey, no, Kurt, like me. Keep being my friend.
I don't think you're hearing me. Let me just...
Yeah, which is why I'm not going to do that even with Hello Saints, because I know some people are going to watch it, and it's just not for them. And I totally understand that. And, where some people are kind of taking it a step further, where they want to, like, accuse or make assumptions, or what I feel like are even, like, kind of throwing stones. I'm just not even going to get involved in that, because at the end of the day, I recognize that it's not going to be for everybody.
I think this is an important point that I'm learning more and more, is like you're offering an interfaith experience rather than just an evangelical learning all things about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where there's times where that can be a little bit much, or it's like, okay, I just feel too conflicted when I watch Jeff's Book of Mormon videos, so I'm just going to take a step off, or I'm going to skip these, or I'm going to... But the overall invitation is, let's not avoid the relationships, the conversations.
Right.
And hopefully you can be someone who models that, right? Even though you don't claim to do it perfectly.
Yeah, no, not at all. In fact, when I go back and watch some of my earlier videos, I recognize that it was so one-sided. Like, I didn't have friendships with guys like you or Greg Mattson yet. So I was winging it, and as a result, I was getting some stuff wrong. And it's funny because some Latter-day Saints will watch some of my earlier videos, not recognizing that they're earlier videos. Yeah. And I'm misrepresenting things or misunderstanding things, or maybe even something as simple as like using the term Mormon. They're like, see, you're still not getting it. It's like, no, I'm starting to get it, but back then I wasn't.
Right.
And you helped me with that. I remember last fall, you were like, hey, it's really going to help if you don't make it such a one-sided conversation, but like bring Latter-day Saints on with you. And that's been super helpful. Not only for me, but for the channel to kind of improve the approach.
Yeah, and to me, that's the two sides of the coin, right? That you want to be heard, and that's why you come across as preaching at us sometimes. We want to be heard, and that's why I want to encourage you. Hey, bring Latter-day Saints on. Yeah. So that rather than just sort of skip over something that doesn't feel right or move on, you can hear from us or hear from somebody in our community about it, right? So tell me, I'm not the guy with the Hello Evangelicals YouTube channel, though, hey.
You could.
With enough donations. Like, where do you see Latter-day Saints? I mean, we have a deep tradition of literally coming to your door, knocking on it. I've probably not knocked on thousands of doors with that cadence of like, I am here to preach the word with you, even if you're an evangelical. So what are the suspicions that you feel coming from Latter-day Saints?
I think that's some of the irony here.
It's like, wait a minute, people. You're the one who knocked on my door. Right?
I mean, I'm coming to your house on YouTube and saying, hey, can we talk about our beliefs? And I mean, that's growing up in the Midwest, that's how we viewed Latter-day Saints. They'd knock on our door and basically tell us, like, you have your beliefs? Great. Well, there's more. And that feels like, wait, what are you doing? Like, you're coming to my house to tell me that I need to rethink my beliefs. That a lot of evangelicals I know find that very suspicious. So when you see the guys walking around, it's like, what? Why are you here? Like, what? Yeah. We're good. Now, here's the problem with that. Then you get this certain group of evangelicals who are going to be like, not on my lawn. Yeah. And they start getting adversarial or trying to intimidate Latter-day Saints. And that's wrong. But I mean, I think just the whole idea that Latter-day Saints are sending out missionaries and they're going into neighborhoods and some of that other stuff can cause some suspicion then when you're just conversing with a Latter-day Saint, knowing that you're missionary-minded people, to be like, is he going to try to, like, convince me that my beliefs are wrong, that I need to get baptized? And that's just, again, one of those dynamics that we have to try to acknowledge and overcome if we want to have greater conversation or deeper relationship.
Yeah. Right, and there's this, so obviously we have a deep tradition of missionary work. I was a missionary for 2 years in Tracy, California. It was the end of the day. I was just pumping gas into my car, and I had two evangelicals approach me out of nowhere. I mean, I'm just like, my mind isn't engaged in this conversation, and suddenly the words that they told me is, Jesus is calling you out of the Mormon church. I'm just like, holy God, I'm just pumping gas, man. Like, why are you coming at me right now? And so
it would have been like, my name's Kurt. What's your name?
Exactly.
Can we start there?
It was Elder. I'm Elder Francom. Come on, Jeff.
See, I still don't get it.
But I think generally speaking, every Latter-day Saint has had that experience that makes them very suspicious of that evangelical, like, coming at them and, like, calling them out. And maybe a lot of the evangelicals have had a similar experience with, you knocked on my door, you were, like, pushing this book on me, right? So that's where a lot of suspicion can come from that.
Yeah. Well, and I think Greg Mattson, a mutual friend of ours, Latter-day Saint, he's been really big on this lately, and I appreciate it. And his whole thing, he's speaking to Latter-day Saints, but evangelicals absolutely do this. And that is to be like, of course, whenever you engage with anybody, you're going to be thinking like, well, if they're not a church member, is this an opportunity for me to help, share the plan of salvation with them? We do the same thing. Like, hey, this person's an unbeliever. If I can share the gospel with them, maybe there's an opportunity for them to be saved.
Yeah.
When they don't want to have that conversation or they're not interested, do we too quickly say, well, then I'm done with you.
Right.
Or I don't want to be friends with you anymore. If you're not good to get baptized, if you're not good to be converted or say the sinner's prayer, then this relationship's no good to me. So see you later. And we need to do better at that, because I can honestly say I am growing and I'm being edified by this friendship, and I would be missing out on a lot if I would have just been like, oh, Greg's really firm in his Latter-day Saint faith. Well, I don't really know what good this relationship is to me anymore.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And so, what would you say about, like, what if a Latter-day Saint did come to you with doubts and sort of being like, hey, I'm looking, this isn't working for me or whatever, like, because some will say that your videos out there are like, you're looking for that person in the comments who's beginning to doubt, and then you're swooping in and pointing him, setting him straight type of thing. And I can see how people could say that about Latter-day Saints, right? Because, I don't know, if an evangelical came to me and said, hey, why don't you come to church on Sunday and see if this is of any benefit to you?
If someone's going through a faith crisis and they're reaching or gravitating toward agnosticism or atheism, I absolutely am open to having a conversation with them. And if they want to continue that conversation, I'll continue that conversation. Yeah. I don't chase them down. I don't pursue them. I don't try to, beg them to come and have a conversation with me. But I think a Latter-day Saint would probably do the same thing. If somebody's coming to a Latter-day Saint saying, I'm having a hard time in my faith context, or I don't understand how I should understand the gospel or Jesus, you're not going to be like, well, go talk to your pastor, bye. No, you're going to be like, well, if you want to know how I view it, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
So that's my honest answer.
Yeah.
And I've said that quite a bit on the channel and other channels.
And I think together as Latter-day Saint brothers and sisters, evangelical brothers and sisters, I think one big thing we can agree on is, well,
take this broad brush and do the stroke. I want to hear it.
No, so here's what I'm saying. And maybe a lot of evangelicals, when they'd say, definitely not the Latter-day Saints. Don't go over there. But it breaks our heart, both of our hearts, when we hear somebody leave any tradition of Christianity, including Latter-day Saints, and go towards a lifestyle of atheism and no God. It's like, man, at least go to Jeff's church, like, or at least, engage with the missionaries and talk about Jesus Christ in the context of the Book of Mormon. I get that not all evangelicals are going to say that, but that's what really breaks our heart. And so, to me, if a Latter-day Saint is going through a faith crisis and they're willing to at least talk to Jeff, then I'm like, okay, man, like, keep them focused on Jesus.
And to be fair, there's a lot of Latter-day Saints that are uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
And I understand that. At the same time, that is going to be baked into the reality of two faith groups who aren't compromising their beliefs, two individuals from their faith groups who aren't going to compromise their beliefs, who are still interacting with a world that is lost and dying and fallen and in need of hope and in need of a savior. So if that's not going to change, then we are going to function accordingly when it comes to having conversations, even with people in each other's faith context who might be wrestling with stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why I think at the end of the day, I was actually having breakfast with a pastor friend of mine in Utah a couple days ago, and I really like the way he put it. He said, I just don't think that we're necessarily called to proselytize, but we can still hold on to our conviction to proclaim. Jesus came to proclaim the truth. He's the Word made flesh. And that's what he called us to do during the Great Commission, to go into the uttermost parts of the world and to make the disciples, but it's to do it by proclaiming the gospel. So I am comfortable having these conversations knowing that based on the convictions that I have, it's been proclaimed, while at the same time hearing what Latter-day Saints feel is important to proclaim to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me personally, I feel comfortable with how I sort that out between me and God, and how every Latter-day Saint I engage with sorts that out between themselves and the Lord as well.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where you can have sustainable conversation and sustainable relationship, which is what I'm hoping Hello Saints is creating.
Yeah.
Even if it isn't for everybody.
Yeah. So I've encountered several people who they know we have a friendship, and so they'll ask me certain questions. And one in particular who's sort of put some content online who's very suspicious.
Can I guess what the question is?
What is it?
Is Jeff wearing a hairpiece?
Let's end it here.
Don't touch
the rumors.
It's sacred.
But he's very suspicious and still not settled. Even those things I say, and I say, you know what? Keep pushing Jeff on these things. Like, ask the questions, and he's not. It's not unfair to Jeff to push him on these things. And so I would say those listening out there, if you still feel that suspicion, let's vocalize it. Put it in the comments. Let's talk about it, and just hang with us, hang with Jeff, and but push him on these questions. You want tough questions.
For sure. I mean, I led with the questions I had. That's what determined the videos, the content I was making. What are my questions? But then I started releasing videos of responding to Latter-day Saint questions. So I'm wanting to create content that brokers a conversation. Here are my curiosities. What are yours?
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, well, how many more questions can you ask? Like, how long can you keep going with this? It's like, as long as we're willing to talk to each other and we have questions, there's a conversation to be had.
It's sort of like asking, well, Jeff, how long do you think we'll be friends? Like maybe another 2 years, and then we'll run out of things to say. Right?
And that's why my hope is that like it does broaden even beyond Pastor Jeff and Hello Saints. Like let's make this a broader conversation. So Kurt and I are going to continue on our way down to St. George. Definitely check out the Leading Saints podcast. That's Kurt's thing. I don't know if you want to tell people about what the podcast is.
It's on YouTube, so you don't have to go far. You can just jump over to Leading Saints, red logo.
Link in the description.
That's right. And subscribe there. And we talk all things leadership in the context of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So the journey continues. And I'm glad that you're continuing this journey on Hello Saints. Be sure to like this video and subscribe. Support me on Patreon if you'd like to. If not, it's not a requirement. You don't have to pay to play here. Come back, watch more videos. Let's continue the conversation. Check out Leading Saints. And until next time, see you later, Saints.